All right, that was President Biden speaking live from the Capitol 1 year since the insurrection happened there. He spent much of his speech slamming Trump, his supporters, and Republicans for not accepting the results of the 2020 election, and said that we all need to come together. Our darkest days can lead to light and hope, he said there at the end of his speech.
I believe the beginning of his speech, he was more trying to convey that it was directed at those that took part in the insurrection, and then tried to say that those that supported them were also in the wrong. But yes, this is the most pointed and direct that we have heard him regarding the insurrection, regarding the election, regarding any of the people that still believe there's a conspiracy about the election. He even brought up the discrepancy when people say that there were issues with the ballots. Well, then why did Republicans win so many races down ballot if the election was meddled with? It is interesting. He then tried to kind of change the tone right there at the end and convey this brought together. It is interesting that we would look back on that day and then just kind of bring up all those old wounds, pick at the scab, if you will.
Well, what's interesting is that Biden ran on unity, bringing the country together, and that felt like one of the most divisive speeches I've heard him give. There was a lot of anger in his tone of voice and just a lot of reflecting on what happened last year at this time. He did say that we do need to look forward and that there, is light at the end of a dark tunnel, but definitely getting his point across that he says that our elections are safe, secure, and those results of the 2020 election were reliable.
The other thing is, at the start of the speech, and Vice President Kamala Harris also put it in historic perspective. Going back to when the British set the White House on fire in 1812, right? Like this never happened. The Confederate flag never flew in the Capitol building until that day. So a lot of that was, I believe, you could hear it in his voice, that being back in those halls again 1 year later definitely riled up some emotion in the president. And you heard a lot of that today. It was very interesting how it kept going back, very pointed at the former president, especially after everything that we have now been through over the last year. But again, trying to strike a tone at the end of saying, hey, let's move forward. And it would be interesting to see now, hey, what are the elections going to be like this year coming up in November? We have more elections. There is more legislature out there versus restricting voting rights or granting more voting rights. There's a lot to be seen.
Well, he took it as far as saying right now new laws are being written and Republicans and Trump supporters are trying to suppress our votes. Of course, if you talk to anybody on the right, they'll say that about the left. So it's a lot of back and forth here from both sides. But of course, the president just touting that the election, that the 2020 election was the greatest demonstration of democracy in our history. He said that people headed out to the polls during a pandemic, put their lives at risk, got their votes out, and that we can be confident in our elections and in our elections moving forward.
All right, I'm sure you will hear a lot more about this going forward. We will have more on this, and I'm sure there will be reaction from the Republican side, reaction potentially from the former president, and we will have more on that here on Sunrise and at midday at 11. We will be right back.